The preseason top 25 coaches poll came out yesterday, and I have news about that is going to make Baylor fans very happy. On Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up? Thank you for tuning into another episode of Locked On Baylor, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. I'm Cam Stewart, your host of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. And the big news around college football yesterday, unless you're a Michigan fan, is that the top 25 preseason coaches poll dropped. And I'm going to tell you why there's good news in this for Baylor. Also going to check in with Steven Simcox of Locked On Horned Frogs, get a TCU perspective of this Gary Patterson news and what that might do for the future, because he actually has a pretty good insight on it and what that could mean for Baylor. And then finally, Baylor Volleyball, bringing back a familiar face and a familiar name for the program and for the entire university. Good news, good vibes happening around that program as well. Ooh, sorry about that. Something in the throat there. Starting with football. Again, coaches poll, top 25 preseason dropped yesterday, and I will save you the time. Baylor is not in it. Baylor is not in the top 25. Break your heart. Conspiracy at the highest level. How is Baylor at a competitive 3-9 last year not in the top 25 poll? I know we're all wondering that today, but I will say, if you look at some of the teams that are on there, if you beat Baylor, you have got some recognition. Kansas State in the top 25. They beat Baylor last year. I look at the others receiving votes. This is the respect that Baylor gets. Tech beat Baylor. They got votes for the top 25. They got 4 of them. Iowa State beat Baylor. They got votes, 15 of them. Historically, Liberty famously beat Baylor in 2017. They got 15 votes. They see that Auburn is on the schedule for next year for Baylor. They give them 25 votes. UCF barely loses to Baylor, blows a 28-point lead. They get votes as well. Texas State famously beating Baylor last year. They got 2 votes. And yeah, I think it just goes to show if you can hang tough with Baylor or beat Baylor, you're going to get some recognition somewhere in the top 25. So that's where Baylor comes out great. And the news that I have for you, without any further ado, the news for Baylor fans that is going to make you happy is the preseason top 25 does not matter. It doesn't. It's fugazi. It's based off nothing, really. You got some good players coming back from last year, but you haven't played a single down this year. So who cares who's in the top 25? Am I a bitter Baylor fan? I mean, most of the time, yeah, I am. But I didn't expect Baylor to be in the top 25, and neither did you. And the good news is it does not matter. Doesn't mean a thing. In 2018, they were not ranked to start the season. They finished 6-6. In 2022, they were ranked number 10 to start the season. They finished 6-6. In 2021, you remember what their preseason ranking was? The same as it was this year. And it led them to the best record in Baylor football history, a Big 12 championship and a Sugar Bowl championship. See it? It's right there behind me on YouTube. There we go. Doesn't matter. It's also the same one that they were, the preseason ranking that they had last year. And they went 3-9. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Nobody gave them any respect in 2019. They go to the Big 12 championship game in the Sugar Bowl. They didn't get any respect in the preseason poll in 2021. And they won both those games. And 10 more to go along with it. And a postseason top 5 ranking. So it doesn't matter. That's the good news. Is Baylor going to finish in the top 5 like they did in 2021? Probably not. Are they going to finish 3-9 like they did last year, being unranked in the preseason poll? Hopefully not. Hopefully a little bit better than that. But I do find it so funny, the discourse that comes around the top 25 rankings the day it comes out. Do I want Baylor to be in there? Of course. We all do, because that means, hey, we're supposed to have a good season. We're going to be one of the best teams in the country. And it's a great tool to say, hey, you want to see the best college football teams this year? Baylor's one of them. Of course, we all want that. But I think it's hilarious when teams are arguing whether they should be ranked 4th or 5th, or Michigan, the defending national champs, being ranked 8th to start the season. And it's like, who cares? All that matters is, in terms of outside of your locker room, all that matters is how good your conference is and how many of those games you're going to win. The preseason, the polls in August don't mean a darn thing versus the polls in November or December or the beginning of January. I'm talking college football polls in November, okay? That's what I'm talking about. So I think, if anything, Baylor should use it as a chip on their shoulder, because of course they didn't expect to be in the top 25, but there should be plenty of chips on this team's shoulder. The record last year, what people are saying about them this year, the fact that there's already one team that has moved up their homecoming date so that it will be the date that you are in town. Those things should be the chips on your shoulders. The fact that your coach almost got fired last year, is on the hot seat this year, that should be a chip on your shoulder. The fact that you had the second worst rushing attack in the conference last year, that should be a chip on your shoulder. The fact that you had the worst offensive line in the conference, the most sacks allowed in the Big 12, that should be a chip on your shoulder. The fact that you had statistically probably the worst defense in the conference last year, that should be a chip on your shoulder. The fact that you went 3-9 and 1-7 at home and didn't beat a single FBS team on your home field last year, that should be a chip on your shoulder. Not the preseason polls. Who cares? If you go out and beat Utah week 2, you're in the top 25. It's like, that's what college football is. That's more of a shout out to some of our brethren in the Big 12 as well. My Iowa State people, my Texas Tech people. Doesn't matter, guys. You win your first few games and you're right back in it. But I think Baylor's recent history is so intertwined with the fact that the preseason poll does not matter. I look at 2 of the last 3 Big 12 championships they won. They were not ranked in the preseason poll. 2013, 2021. And again, 2019, a great year. They were undefeated well into November. They weren't ranked to start the season. So nobody cares. Go out there and win football games. This is a public service announcement to those of you who are actually a little bit worked up about this, of which there are a few, but most of us didn't expect to be there. And if I am the Baylor coaching staff, I'd be like, guys, don't even look at the preseason polls. We're not going to be there. Doesn't matter. And to be quite honest, there's a lot more pressure on the teams that are inside the top 10 in this poll. A la Baylor in 2022. They lost their second game of the year, their first true road game. I think it's a much better situation to be in, to be a bubble Big 12 team and not be in the preseason top 25 than be in it. If you're one of the best teams in the country, that's a different story. But I think this is easier for this team to work with, not even receiving votes. They don't have this illusion of pressure here. They could just go out there and play football because they looked a little too pressured last year and they weren't very good. So preseason poll, does it matter? Cam Stewart says no. And you should think no as well. So it doesn't matter that Baylor's not in it. And it should be used as something of a motivational tool, but also all those other things I just listed should be used as motivational tools. Let's hear from my conversation with Steven Simcox about this Gary Patterson deal and what that could mean for Baylor down the line. But first, let's hear from our friends at FanDuel. Yes, because FanDuel is sponsoring this video, and we are super happy to have FanDuel on with us. Of course, just as much as I love sports and watching sports, and I hate it this time of year. I can't get into the Olympics like a lot of other people, okay? The sports are not doing what I want them to do, and I need my sports to be interesting. That's why FanDuel has stepped in to help. They let me keep the sports going whenever I want, and all I have to do is just open the app, Dream up any bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Once again, that is FanDuel.com.
So when I was listening to this interview, I sort of came away with the idea of this is a guy that thinks he wants to work, but then he gets to work and he's like, you know what? I don't really want to work like that anymore. And he talked about playing golf. And I feel like for a long time, everybody's perspective about Gary, because he was always yelling and spitting fire and looked like he was on the verge of cardiac arrest most of the time, was that was a dude that was just going to, I mean, for lack of a better term, die on the field, or you were going to have to drive him out of there. He was a football lifer. That's what he did. But late in his tenure, like, he was doing the songwriting thing. He was getting more involved with his charity work in Fort Worth. And I don't know, Cam, I got this suspicion that I think he probably wants to be a head coach, but I don't feel like he wants to deal with everything that head coaches have to deal with now. And I'm not sure he has like the personality to be an assistant. So unless it was just a really can't miss type of a defensive coordinator job, I feel like he's done. But what was your thoughts when you were hearing him talk about maybe what's next for him?
Yeah, I kind of had similar thoughts in terms of, you know, what else is he going to do? You know what I mean? Like he's already done the two rivals now and kind of an awkward thing. He's 3 years removed from being a head coach, and a very important 3 years in terms of college football. But he just came back to it over and over again. He wants to coach. He said it in the winter, and he reiterated again over the weekend. Said it in the winter before the Baylor job, and now again, he wants to coach. And one thing that did stick out to me is during spring ball, he was out there on the field. Like he was coaching, not just consulting players. He was coaching players. And he mentioned that a few times throughout the interview of how much he thought of the players, how he got to know them over the 6 months. So we as fans didn't see a lot, but he got to know the players pretty well, it sounded like. And with hearing all that, I'm like, this guy still wants to coach. And I don't know that it's going to be, TCU or Houston or Rice or anything like that. But I don't know that it would shock me if an FCS school takes a shot at him, which seems like, well, that's weird. But I think back to like a Howard Schnellenberger, for your college football historians, took Miami to new heights it had never been to in the early 80s. He went off to the USFL. And then like 20 years later, he took FAU to an FCS national championship and then into Division I. And so I'm like, could I see Gary Patterson doing that at somewhere like Sam Houston? Maybe. Actually, they just flipped over, didn't they? But you know what I mean? Like taking
I get your point.
From FCS or even a Division II. And, he's not there forever, but he's there a couple of years. He helps them make whatever transition they need. The recruiting game, and that is more similar to what he's used to than, hey, what's our NIL collective look like? What's our transfer portal options? I think he could do something like that because he is that much of a sicko that he could do that in whatever his 60s and take that next chapter. But I don't see it being like the next UTEP coach or a defensive coordinator at A&M or anything like that. I think to your point about the personality, I think the dude's a head coach. Yeah. Or an analyst, but he's a head coach. Like he's not going in there to be taking orders from anybody.
I mean, I could also just see, all right, you play golf and you do whatever kind of hobbies you have for a year. And then you're like, all right, I got a lot of time left. Hopefully, I got another 20. Can I keep filling my days with this? And maybe he has a different perspective.
He did say he wanted to start a podcast.
I did hear that. Yeah. I mean,
Which
Locked
is
On
big.
Horned Frogs, that invitation's open, Gary.
We
come
threw
to the
out
show.
all the invitations of all my shows immediately. Like, hey, Gary. I actually think he could do something great like what Belichick's going to do this year, like the film room show. It's
Yeah.
for a very select audience, but like who better than Gary Patterson, like talking defense, like a 4-2-5, like that would be unbelievable. But yeah, maybe it's just golf. I don't know.
He was really good. He did the national title film room broadcast a few years back. I can't remember what game it was, but he did a great job. I mean, it was, it's just talking ball. So it's live there on the TV. Yeah. It's just stream of consciousness type of stuff. I could definitely see him doing something like that. Okay, transitioning a little bit, because when the season ended last year, I would say the vibes for Baylor football were at probably a 0. Maybe that's generous. Like, it was bad.
Yeah, if we don't include negative numbers, then yes.
And now they've gone through this total rebrand. I love how honest Dave is. Like, he just came to media days and he's like, "Hey, did you guys hear about this NIL stuff? That's real swell. We're getting.
I think we're gonna start doing that.
We're gonna do some of those things, which is nice." And I guess it was over the weekend, and Cam's got an episode up about this right now. But the coaching staff was wearing T-shirts that said "Pay the players." And so I like, is this trying to combat narratives? Like, why are they treating it? Because I'll be honest, obviously this is with rival bias, but it kind of came off to me like an old person that found out about a slang term about 2 years too late. And they're just like kind of peppering it in every sentence. And you're sort of like, okay, you found out what that means. And now you want to show me, what that means. What's the reasoning behind this sudden, like, hey, we get it. Like, we know what you guys want, and we're open to it now. So please, offer us that grace,
Yeah, I really think it is a signal to Baylor fans more than anything else. Because like I maybe I'm thinking too deep into it. I read between the lines. I'm like, they're not saying like, hey, look how great it is we're paying players. What they are saying is like, all right, we get it. We're way behind on everything. But like now we're in this new college football world. We're paying players. We're going to be a little braggadocious about it, even though, I don't think it's going to show up on their wins and loss record this year, maybe a few years down the line. But it's to say, hey, we know we've been a little archaic. We've been a little draconian the last few years, and we have not stepped into this new college football landscape. But here we are. And so, I mean, if it were any other team, I'd be like, yeah, that's kind of cringy. We get it. Everyone else does that. But for Baylor fans, it's like, thank God, man. Like, thankfully, we've got the head screwed on straight, and Dave Aranda and his staff are in the year 2024 in this new college football that we have. And so I think it means, yes, we're going to pay players. We're going to give them a good offer. We're also going to use the transfer portal, which they've used better the last few months than they have the last few years. And we are going to embrace what this new college football is, which includes everything, conference realignment and NIL and whatever it may be. I see it as more of a bigger picture that here is what we are stepping into now. And hopefully at some point it leads to more wins. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and to level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. Whether you're in speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber. You're not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions to apply. That Guaranteed Fit only available to our U.S. customers. And once again, that is at ebaymotors.com. Exciting news for the first family of Baylor University on Monday. First off, thanks to Steven Simcox for having me on Locked on Horned Frogs and doing that crossover. Some good Gary Patterson talking there, and he brought up a facet of that hadn't really thought of in terms of his coaching future. So appreciate Stephen for that. On to this Baylor volleyball news. They have announced that they are bringing in a new assistant coach. She comes from Liberty. She's coached at Baylor before. Her name is Shelby Livingstone. Yes, the daughter of the first gen Brad Livingstone, and of course, saving the best for last, the university president, Dr. Linda Livingstone. She has also been on the Baylor staff before and a pretty good volleyball player in her own right. She played 4 years at Rice, led them to a conference championship, was a volunteer assistant with the Bears for a couple of years, had a conference championship, regular season and conference tournament championship there, and a Final Four berth in 2019. But the last 2 years she has been at Liberty. And you guessed it, won a conference championship there as well. So they hire a familiar name, someone who's very familiar with the program, and of course the university. And she also knows a thing or two about winning. Shelby Livingstone, everywhere she's gone, they have won. And this is all keeping in the Baylor family, because not only did Shelby volunteer assist Ryan McGuire here at Baylor for a couple of years, but she also coached at Liberty under Trevor Johnson, who was a former Baylor assistant and who played for Ryan McGuire at Cal Baptist. So even though she didn't play for Ryan McGuire, the coaching tree, the puppet string, is Ryan McGuire has got it going with this coaching tree that he has. And I mean, this is great. She goes to Liberty after some successful seasons at Baylor on that staff. In first year, they go 23-9. Their first regular season conference title ever, and they went 14-2 in the conference and had their record best RPI going into the postseason. So, like, we're talking about kind of record-setting stuff. She's seen like all her stops go to the NCAA tournament and win championships, conference championships. And yeah, that best Baylor team ever, 2019, she was on that staff. They were number one in the country going into that tournament. Yassiana Presley was there. She was an All-American. They also had Hannah Locken, now Hannah Sedgwick, and Shelley Stafford as well. I think they all were All-Americans that year, as a matter of fact, and went all the way to the Final Four before losing to Wisconsin. Man, what a season that was. That was like really so much fun. Just thinking about that in my stream of consciousness when they went to Pittsburgh, and it was before the women's basketball team won the national championship a few weeks later. So me, as a member of the class of 2019, had not seen Baylor win a varsity NCAA national championship. And so we were like really into this volleyball thing. And I remember watching it at the late Fuzzy's Taco Shop for Thursday Night Trivia and watching that Final Four game. So a lot of great memories, and Shelby Livingstone had a lot to do with that as a volunteer assistant on Ryan McGuire's staff. So love to see that. Love to see Baylor keeping it in the family. And, you know, it's awesome that she is the president's daughter and is on staff. But I think independent of that, she has proven herself to be a pretty darn good volleyball player and a heck of a volleyball coach too, as I mentioned, with the championships that follow her. So excited to see that Shelby Livingstone is back on campus, and some of the people I know within the athletic department just cannot say enough nice things about her, being, you know, one of the nicest people that they've ever had the pleasure of working with. And, you know, someone who is very dedicated to her faith as well. I think she did some time. I don't mean it like that. Spent some time at Truett Seminary at Baylor, and was also the faith and sports instructor for Baylor in her final year on campus before going to Liberty, again, another Christian school as well. So you get someone who gets it, who gets Baylor, who gets the message, who gets what this program is about, this athletics program is about, and someone that really gets the sport of volleyball and the successful head coach Ryan McGuire. So check, like 5 checks on the Shelby Livingstone thing. Great hire for Baylor, not just for the optics, but also for volleyball as well. So welcome back, Shelby Livingstone. I got to imagine this has to feel kind of like home for her, because I think she was still at Rice when her mom got the got the gig as the president. So, it's not like she went to Baylor undergrad or anything, but has obviously spent a lot of time here now. Her mom being the president, and she and her dad, Shelby's dad, had spent time at Baylor as well, well before they became president and first gent. So clearly a lot of love for Baylor there and a lot of volleyball acumen as well. So welcome back, Shelby. And congratulations to that volleyball program for hopefully a dynamite hire there. Let me know what you guys think about Shelby Livingstone coming back to Baylor. Drop that down in the comments below. What you think about the preseason top 25, whether you care that Baylor's not in it or not. I don't know what you were expecting. Drop that down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell to get notified every time we drop a video here on YouTube. We're going to have some Big 12 previews starting this week. Even tomorrow, if there's not huge breaking news, we'll start to have some Big 12 preseason previews for what you can expect about the games on Baylor's schedule and the teams that they will be battling for in this great conference. Be sure to find us on YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts, where we are your first listen today and every day. And we thank you for that on your favorite program, which is, of course, Locked On Baylor.